So we have a very special guest today, Reverend Anand Anma, and she's joining us from Puerto Rico. And I just want to share a little bit about Anand. So Anand Anma is a unity ordained minister, speaker, and author who weaves together spiritual teachings and profound insights in her work. She's known as a free-flowing poet of consciousness, according to Gay Hendricks. Anand draws upon her studies in consciousness, restorative justice, and spiritual growth to inspire personal and collective transformation. Through her writings and ministry, she emphasizes the importance of compassion, love, and unity in fostering inner peace and healing. And so, Anand, welcome, and take it away.
Thank you so much, C. Would you mind pausing screen share so I can see everyone?
Screen share. You can go into your upper view button and make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have to record you on a certain.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, okay.
Go to gallery.
Yeah, it's not letting me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
That's all right.
Don't you usually stop sharing your screen so that we get to see the speaker?
Okay, just a moment.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I'm very moved by this community and the unity principles I feel already active in all of us. I heard about a scientific study many years ago, and it's really stuck with me. Scientists were wanting to know, how do bee colonies work? And so they looked at hive after hive, bee colony after bee colony. What's going on here? And they noticed something very interesting. 10% of each of these populations, each one of these colonies, 10%, give or take, were bees who would get in the way of the other bees. We might call them lazy, ineffective, mischief making. But every colony seemed to have this 10%. So they were really interested. What would happen if we took that 10% away? And the theory was, well, the 90% will be able to do their work finally. So it'll be much more effective and efficient. You know, we're very concerned with productivity. We have that filter in our cultures. And what they found uniformly, of those colonies that remained, 90%, 90%, 90%, of the 90%, 10 morphed into jerk bees. So they took that 10% of the ineffective, lazy, whatever, and put them elsewhere. And lo and behold, they had a purpose. So the 90% had to morph into the jerk. Of the 90%, 10 morphed into jerk bees. That's what we call them, the shorthand. So this really helped me relax a little bit. Okay, so we all have our purpose. Is that what this is saying? That's one of the messages I get from that. And we can probably all agree that we're living in divisive times right now. Politically, geographically, yes. Culturally, probably. Sometimes in our families, sometimes in our most precious, most intimate relationships, we can get into divisiveness. And the evidence that our minds collects can be very, very compelling. We can, I don't know about you, but I can create pie charts and graphs of why they're wrong and I'm right. It's very compelling too. And it seems fact, it seems correct, it seems the truth. but it's only the truth through my filters. So I want to talk about in a moment how important it is for us to return to love. But first, let's talk a little bit about that agitation, the rupture that we feel. Katie Hendricks, one of my mentors, says, when I'm afraid, the other person becomes the enemy. When I'm afraid, the other person becomes the enemy because something happens with my nervous system that shuts down the knowing that we're all one, that we're all love, we're all of God. But it gets shut down if I'm in fear. Going back to that evidence, the pie charts, the graphs that say I'm right and you're wrong. I don't know about you, but I've heard this before. Would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And my answer for a long time was yes, both. And I realized recently when I was sharing this with somebody else, being right often made me happy, or so I thought. And it was a cheap, kind of a saccharine happiness. Really, it was more like adrenaline and some satisfaction of my ego. But then, 20 years ago, when I first read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, some of you may have read that book. It's been more than 20 years. And one line seared itself into my memory. And that was, the need to be right is an act of violence. The need to be right is an act of violence. I do want to be right, but I don't want to be violent. I don't want it to come at the cost of our connection. Eventually, sometimes in the moment, I do want it to be at the cost of our connection. But when I come back home to myself, I remember that, yeah, we are all one. So, when people are acting like maybe a jerk bee, and I'm gathering the evidence, or I'm making them wrong, I'm really doing what Brene Brown, I've also heard Gay Hendricks say this. They say, fighting with reality. What? No, 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 no. I know what reality is or should be, and that's not it, is what my ego tries to say. That's not it. It should be this. But if I remember, oh, I'm fighting with reality, I'm fighting with what is in this moment, again, I can take a breath. In that breath, I can remember, I don't want to actually be violent. I don't necessarily need to be right here. We know the dynamic. Fighting is somebody needs to win and somebody needs to lose, right? And when the winner wins, it's at what cost? More rupture, more distance, more violence. But what if instead the person who returned to love the fastest in the argument, in the fight, what if they were the winner? What if we changed the rubric for winning to the person who returns to love the fastest? And how do we do that? Well, we use the power of power, right? The power of power is agency. It's agency. So if my power of power is underdeveloped, or it has a little cold or flu at the moment, I can be in victim. I can be ineffective. I can be wondering, like, why does this keep happening to me? I can't make stuff happen. If it's overdeveloped, a lot of times I'm controlling. I want to be right. I want to make sure I know what's going to happen. But when it's well developed, I can use that power of powers to return to love, not worrying if they're going to or not, but knowing that I can. We have all come in from our own wars. We've all come in from our own wars, and it might be literal or it might be figurative. We might have sick parents or sick children. We might have unhealed trauma or PTSD or neurodivergency or a really hard boss or any number of things. So when I remember that not just me, but that all of us are coming in from our own war, I can start to give a little grace to myself and to others. Another way I can use my power of powers is to pre-forgive. Pre-forgive. What does that mean? Well, I can wake up in the morning and say to myself, I pre-forgive every offense or challenge that somebody puts in front of me. If that's too big, I can break it down to the first 20 or the first 10 or 5, whatever feels manageable. But I find that even if I just start with 5, number 6 is a lot easier and number 7 is easier. So I can pre-forgive knowing that everybody has come in from their own war and give them and myself some grace. Another thing that I remember is that relationships are 100% projection. You've probably heard the adage, anytime I point the finger at you, there's 3 fingers pointing back at me, right? Yeah. So what does this 100% projection mean? I might be feeling feelings so big that I can't even handle them. So I take them out of me and I put them on you. That's one way we do it. Another is that I don't like a part of me and I see you doing something similar or the same, and it inflames me because I've disowned that part of me. I also notice, this one's more subtle, that I sometimes get a little jealous when somebody's acting out because I quote unquote know better and I can't do that anymore. And so that can also be a source of irritation for me. Like the little kid or the little meow, 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 meow in me might be like, they shouldn't do that. I really want to do something like that. I love the scripture, 1 John chapter 4, verse 16. I start after the first phrase. God is love. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. God is love. Okay, what does that mean? Well, I don't know about you, but I wasn't raised with any sort of religion or spirituality in my home. And so when I struck out to seek, followed the impulse inside, I didn't know anything about God except for what I'd seen in the media. And I knew that I didn't relate to that. And so I started to see, okay, well, or I just kind of made sense of God is love. God is love, unseen, but very powerful, and something I can feel if I pay attention. Okay. And that sustains me today, more than 2 decades later. But God is so much more than that to me. And those who abide in love abide in God. What is abide? Abide is like an energetic, etheric, a felt sense of dwelling, of staying, of enduring, of being with. Reside is like physical. My physical body resides here, but abide is like my being. I'm abiding in, I'm bathing in, I'm receiving, I'm being with. I'm abiding in God, and I'm abiding in that power of love. And God abides in them. Right. These are the unity principles. God's in me and in you, everywhere present. Okay, so if I'm remembering, I'm knowing, re-knowing over and over again that God, when I abide in God, I'm abiding in love, and God is abiding in me. That power of circulation is happening. And then I remember, oh yeah, it's always happening. It's just, I don't necessarily always remember. And that's okay. That's why we come together. So as I embark, use the power of power to do this pre-forgiveness, to commit to being the one to return to love the fastest, to letting go, use my agency, then you and I can continue to have that beautiful cycle, that beautiful flow together. And I want to be clear, this isn't spiritual bypass. I don't know about you, but I have definitely used spiritual bypass as a way of not having my lesson or my feelings. And that doesn't work. So I'm not using my power of power to repress, depress, deny, sweep under the rug. I'm having agency to make choice. And that choice might include, I need to feel angry for a moment, and then I'm going to make a new choice. I'm going to forgive them after the fact. I'm going to forgive myself after the fact. I don't know about you, but I want to abide in love and have God abide in me. I want to remember that. I want to live that. I want that to be my prayer, my breath, my knowing. And it requires that I give myself and you grace. But when I can radically include the jerk bees, the mischief makers, the people who seem to have it out for me on the highway, they didn't use their turn signal. When I can give them grace, I'm giving myself grace, and we can continue to dwell in God, abide in God. And, spoiler alert, these jerk bees, while they make mischief and they give us challenges and seem like they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, we got to remember that we are all somebody's jerk bee sometime. And when I remember that, I remember that I'm a jerk bee in innocence. I don't mean to be a jerk bee. I don't go out to be a jerk bee. But yes, I step on toes. Yes, I hurt people's feelings. Yes, I can get in the way. But when I remember that, it's so much easier to love those unlovable bits and to give grace even when it's hard. Bless you. Mhm. Thank you. meditation. Thank you, C. All right. So if you like, you can soften your gaze or lower your eyes and really land where you're seated. Let the power of gravity hold you, support you, envelop you right now, right here. We can hold in our hearts this intention, this affirmation. Divine love radiates, governs, elevates this and all relationships. Love elevates me. Love elevates you. We dwell in the God I am, we are. And let your breath breathe that in. Let it circulate outward and then come back in. We allow these words to resonate within. We hold any current relationship that might be heavy on our hearts or scratching at our minds. Divine love radiates, governs, elevates this relationship. Love elevates us both. We dwell in the God I am, we are. Divine love returns this relationship to love, elevates us both. We abide in love. We abide in God. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, come back to the room and look at one another and gaze your divine love upon the others here. If you want to come on camera and receive some of that divine love, you'll receive it anyway. Mm. Now here's to abiding in love. Blessings. Thank you, Seed.